Welcome, everyone. I'm Jeff Hale, developer advocate here at Prefect. I'm joined by Will Raphaelson. Will, do you want to tell folks what it is you do here at Prefect for any newcomers? He's a frequent guest on the show, I must say, but it's been a few months.
Absolutely. First things first, this is going to be one of several shout outs I give to you. Nice job pronouncing my last name. It's a rough one.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. No.
Yeah. I'm a senior technical product manager here. I've worked on a lot of different things, a lot of growth and GTM efforts, but these days focused a lot on observability, the first big release of which is automations, which I'm excited to talk about today.
Awesome. And where are you coming from today, Will?
Oh, Chicago, Illinois.
Chicago, Illinois. City of broad shoulders is what it's referred to as sometimes, I hear. Is that a made up thing? Is that a real thing?
I don't know that we have particularly broad shoulders. I'm also like a transplant, so I don't know if OG Chicagoans have broader shoulders. It's from a great poem, though.
It is.
You should read that poem. Yeah. And you're in DC, right?
I am in DC, but I'm very intrigued. This is from a poem. I'm gonna have to put something in. Find it. We'll find it and put it in the community Slack. If you're not in community Slack, viewers, come join the Prefect community Slack. We got over 23,000 people there now, which is just a mind-blowing big number, I think.
Yeah, and, well done growing that community.
I feel like this is a great time to give a shout out for something we just introduced today, which is geographic locations specific channels within the Slack community. So we have one for Chicago, we have one for DC, we have one for a number of other cities, countries, regions around the world. And if yours isn't there and you want to get in on that, just let us know in Slack and check it out there.
Join the Chicago channel. Our office is great for hosting. It's also right above, as you know, Jeff, it's right above a great brewery, Metro Brewing. And we'll do drinks on Prefect or something, happy hour on Prefect for the Chicago channel.
Oh, I love it.
Do not have finance approval for that, so there's an asterisk on that, but I'm sure we'll get it.
No problem. We'll get that worked out. It is a super cool office, and it's right on like a river too. It's awesome. You can literally take a boat to the office, right?
Yeah, North Branch of the Chicago River. If you wanted to, row or paddle up there, you could. That stretch of the river is a little gnarly. It's a little stinky some places as well, but it's still beautiful.
Wow, awesome. Yeah, super cool. All right, so automations is the name of the game today. What should we know about automations? And this just came out, right? Like this is hot off the press here.
Yeah. So this is in open beta as of yesterday. There's a lot of new tech backing it. It's a relatively complex feature, and so we just wanted to release it in increments. We had an internal alpha, closed beta, but it's officially in open beta, slated for a big GA release. I'm sure you'll hear from me again then in mid-January. So automations, we try to name things in intuitive ways. I'll talk a bit about the details, but automations automate things on your behalf. And from just like a career product manager's perspective, this is kind of a win-win for me. This is like a real crowd pleaser of a feature in that, there will be things on the roadmap that are super important, super valuable, but maybe for a subset of users. This is very important for a machine learning engineer or a QA person or a productionizer. Automations is sufficiently generic that just like everyone has asked for something like this. Everyone will use it, both across like the space of an organization, but also in our case across the time of an organization, and that our Prefect 1 users who love Prefect 1, but are also looking forward to migrate to Cloud 2. This is an important incentive for that. There was a very cool automations feature in Cloud 1, and we have taken that. We've taken our learnings from the use and the patterns of automations in Cloud 1 and brought it to Cloud 2 in what I think is a really exciting way, what I hope is an exciting way for our users as well.
Awesome. Super cool. And how long has this been in the works? How long have we been working on this on the back end?
Yeah, so automations is exciting for me because not only is it this gap filler from Prefect 1 to 2, but the underlying APIs and concepts, and you can read about this in the docs, or I can go into detail, really your call. The underlying concepts are going to be key to a much longer product initiative from kind of the Prefect side into observability of the modern data stack as a whole. So you might be wondering kind of like, what's the bridge between this automations feature and what we're calling data stack observability? And that is those underlying APIs. We've got these concepts of named resources that can emit events, and we can introspect and aggregate a bunch of events and trigger things based on them. So the underlying infrastructure and APIs, we've been thinking about these since July or so, built out a POC, did a lot of infrastructure testing. Shouts out to the team there. and automations we've been building for, I don't know, 4 to 6 weeks.
Cool. Yeah, so it's been a work in progress. It's been a lot of effort from a lot of people. So awesome to see it kind of come to one of many milestones along the way here, but a big milestone here. Just this week.
It's been fun. And we're talking about automations. It probably just makes sense to show people what those are. Do you agree with that?
Let's do it.
All right.
Yeah, absolutely. Always easier to understand something when you can take a look at it too.
I'm going to share my screen here. It's always a little wonky. I'm sharing a very big monitor. I'm going to need some terminal windows open. I'm going to need some application windows open, some code. So you just let me know how things look once I share.
Perfect. Yeah, that's a joy of getting to switch back and forth between code and the UI and show it all.
All right, so you should see yourself right now. But all right, do you see the application and some terminal windows?
Yeah, put it up on the screen right here. There you go. Does it look okay for you? So what I see right now is I see that you see what I see. I think maybe I see your browser, but I don't see a terminal window.
I think it's just this transparent black window here, right? Like if I copy.
Yep.
But this is good. Let me zoom way in for you. Okay, so starting with the application, right? So create an automation to get started. Automations are composed of triggers and actions. So triggers are kind of what leverages our observability and our visibility system that we've built, which is based on events, as I said. And ultimately, when you're configuring a trigger, you're telling Prefect what to look out for, both in terms of what do I expect to see that I want, what do I not expect to see? What's like a failure mode that we should watch out for and then do something based on. But then also we've got this idea of a reactive trigger, which is, can you tell me when something that I want to happen doesn't actually happen? And so to ground those in some use cases, you might want to take action based on a flow run crashing. Very common use case that we've heard. If a flow run crashes, maybe send a notification, spin up a new agent, resubmit the job. But this reactive sense, and this is one that was a lot more complex on the back end to build, is what happens if we expect a flow to finish in 60 minutes, but actually it's been running for 60 hours. So in that case, we haven't seen anything new. We have no events on which to take action, but actually on the lack of observed events, the system can fire anyway. I'm going to start by just going through the most basic example here. So for trigger type, we're going to go with flow run state right now. Work queue health, so actions based on if your agent is not pulling work queue or that work queue is otherwise unhealthy, that's on the way. But for flow run state, we'll see this menu pop up. And I'm going to do the most basic example, which for me on the trigger side is if a flow completes, or let's say a flow fails. So I've got a flow here, deployed flow, so my flow. And I'm going to say if the flow run enters a failed state, that's what we're watching out for. Then the triggers is where we have this pre-canned list of a bunch of convenient use cases based on user research. We've got cancel the flow run, pause a schedule, pause a work queue, pause or resume a schedule or work queue, or run a deployment. In this case, just for the purpose of the demo, we're going to run a deployment. We're going to run this action deployment here. And you'll see these parameters pop up. These are all kind of dummy parameters, but this is consistent with the deployments experience in the rest of the application, which is that if your deployed flow takes parameters, we're going to just bootstrap this nice little user interface for you to enter those parameters. So in this case, this is what we would call, please interrupt me with questions. Sorry, otherwise I'll just keep talking super fast.
No, you're good. You're just rocking. I'm just saying stuff like cool. I just feel like the interface is really nice and slick here, and people put a lot of time into it. So
it's very slick. Yeah. And so for this case, right, this is what we would call a reactive trigger. That's a little bit of a back-end concept. We'll see how this evolves as we continue to build. But what we mean by that is this is reacting to an observed event. In this case, the event of a flow run failing. So posture, and this is just a message that's going to get logged, but I'm going to say that I'm reactive. Great. Kick off flow run on flow failure. My name and description. Fantastic. Now I've got this automation. So yeah.
That only took a few seconds.
Yeah, it should be pretty easy in the base case as well as in even more complex cases. So what I'm going to do here is I'll show you my code. So this is the flow code for that flow, that my flow. And what I'll do is I'm going to nuke all this, but this flow will now crash, right? Or it'll fail because I raised an exception. And if our automation works how we want it to work, when this flow fails, we will see our action deployment kick off, which you'll see it log a message. And so what I'm going to do here is prefect.
Will, can I have you zoom in a little on the code there, maybe?
Yeah. Sorry. Thank you for that. That's a little too much.
Yeah, that's great.
Prefect agent start queue automations. And then for this action flow, we'll do prefect agent start queue. Whoops. Start queue action. So let's go back to our application here, and I'm going to kick off this quick run. And we should see this run get picked up and fail. And then we'll also see this action flow start on the second terminal window. Yeah, several years I've done technical demos of API platforms and things like this. I know the terminal isn't the most exciting place for a demo, but this is what we got today.
Terminal's cool. I like your transparent terminal too.
Thank you. Great. So what we saw here was that my code crashed. We also logged that it was crashing because I had raised that exception. And then we see the action flow kicked off here. So that's like the very basic reactive version of an automation.
Nice.
Yeah, I think I'll do two other just quick examples here for the purpose of conversation. So back to the app here. I'm going to turn this one off. And I talked about reactive and proactive automations. We'll do a flow run state again, and we will pick our flow. And what we have here is that in addition to enters, we also have this stays in option. So for example, if we were to stay in a running state for 30 seconds, we could then do any of these things. And I think the really powerful one that we've gotten a lot of positive feedback on is if something stays in a running state for 30 seconds is not the right example, but if it stayed in a running state, for example, 30 hours running up your K8s bill or something like that, you could cancel that flow run. And nice. One thing that I'll highlight about this system is that it's, we've joked internally that it's a panopticon. It knows everything. In addition to knowing everything about the flow run state changes and the actions, the orchestration events that are happening in your system, it also really knows about itself. And so when you think about canceling a flow run, or maybe let's contrast it to a deployment. So if I wanted to run a deployment, I would be able to pick these deployments. And that makes sense when you know what you want the action to work on, where you know the object of the action, for example. In the case of a flow run, we don't know what a flow run is until runtime, right? That's why you get, illustrious axolotl or whatever. Those are generated names at runtime. And so it can infer from the action what it's supposed to be acting on. It can infer from the trigger what it's supposed to be acting on. And so on the back end, the trigger fires and it says, this flow run has been running for too long. Let's pass that over to the action and cancel that run. Mm-hmm. And then I'm not going to demo that because we'll have to wait for something to time out, which is even more boring than raw. And I might get in trouble if I did that. But the last thing I'll just highlight about this UI here is that actions are composable. So we could, for example, have cancel a flow run, pause the schedule of the deployment, right? If we know something's up with the agent or the work queue or our infrastructure more broadly, you might want to pause all the scheduled runs so that you don't just rack up late runs. Again, you could resume a schedule if a health check passes in a flow. You could pause a work queue, do whatever you want there.
That seems awesome. It sounds like it will be very popular. I'm sure everyone wants to make sure their stuff doesn't run forever, right?
Yeah. This is a level of governance and abstraction above the flow or above the deployment. This will allow you to link deployments and specify business logic kind of across your Prefect workspace.
Awesome. Super cool. Yeah, this seems very cool. I'm just excited to hear about this. This is and this is everything here is working right now. It's still, are we calling this experimental at this point in case there's still something out there that we find, or are we saying no, this is really, it's still beta, So I
This
don't
is
know what
this
the
is beta. I think experimental. You know, there's kind of different takes on the classical development lifecycle here. Experimental like might not make it to prod. Like we might find out that we can't with good quality support the user patterns, or for business reasons we don't want to, and that we will take out. Anything in beta is going to make it to GA, going to make it to prod, at least in our development lifecycle. So we're calling this beta.
Yeah,
I'll show you one more thing here, and then I'll talk a little bit about the roadmap here. So everything in Prefect is API first. This is all based on RESTful APIs for automations, triggers, and actions. And a few days ago, one of my colleagues, I haven't asked anyone if I could say their name, but I think everyone will be okay with it. Very talented front-end engineer colleague of mine, Craig, was like, well, so we've got all these pre-canned trigger types here, but what if someone creates a trigger type that doesn't fit kind of what we're looking for here? It doesn't pass the validation even, for example, right? We are allowing people to create these arbitrary triggers. What should we do then? And so we use some components from our application from elsewhere in our application to surface this kind of custom event or custom trigger interface. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make that API call. I'm going to show you doing that, and then I'll show you it in the app. Just because I think this is cool from like an educational perspective and shows a little bit more of the internals. So I'm going to kill some of this just because it's distracting. And then I'm going to take the application over here. All right, so I've got this custom automation here. I'm just going to run this code. This is just going to do a post request to our RESTful API. Now we'll see automation. So we've got this custom demo. And this doesn't fit nicely into our UI component. Is it a flow run state change? Is it based on something else? Because via the API, you can actually configure any sort of trigger. And so we're actually surfacing this JSON here for configuration. And we'll see where this goes. Depending on how users want to leverage custom automation types, it might look nothing like this. It could be something more Pythonic. But for the time being, this was just like a 24-hour turnaround, and it will allow people to experiment with triggers and actions in their kind of full and most complex potential. One reason I say that, right, is like I talked about the underlying APIs here being events, triggers, and actions. And events they can be thought of as little kind of like cloud events. They come in JSON payload that says what happened when and some metadata about them. When we create one of these triggers that says it's based on flow run state change, it looks like something like this, right? We expect a flow run to enter the completed state, but there are tons of different events that are already happening within the Prefect world, and we're gathering those. So there are events when users are created. There are events when deployments are created. There are events even when automations themselves fire. And so in what I think is kind of a classic strategy here, we're opening up a much more flexible API than we are a UI. And then what we see people doing here via the API, we will like enshrine with UI conveniences and even Python client conveniences. This was just like a fun little 24-hour thing that I wanted to call out that I think will be super valuable, especially as people start to create more complex automations via API.
Awesome. Very cool. So is the Python client, does that exist yet or not? Not yet.
Nope. We don't know how we want to do that, so we're going to figure that out soon.
Gotcha. Yeah. That's very cool. Makes sense.
I think what I'll do is I'll kill the screen share and just talk a little bit about the roadmap.
Yeah. I'd love to hear about where things are headed here. It seems like there's already a lot of possibilities for folks.
Yeah, but sorry, did I interrupt you? Did you have a question there?
No, go for it.
Nice. So yeah, I mean, I can't say it enough. This is the foundation of a bunch of different observability work. But first things first, we're going to get automations to GA. And what that will include is everything you've seen today. So the flow run state change, trigger types, and that selection of actions, including tons of flexibility on the API. But we're going to add in two more things that I'm pretty excited about. So one are the triggers based on work queue health. We now have a representation in the application of work queues and their health. And we know that is one of the main times where people want to change something about their data flow. It's where they want to react, either turn a work queue off or restart an agent or send a notification, et cetera. So work queue health-based triggers is going to be really cool. And then we're beefing up notifications significantly. So right now we have notifications. It's MVP. and it basically tells you just what happened. A flow failed or something like that. What we're ruminating on right now for the first thing we do in the new year is a much more intelligent form of notifications that are more context aware. So you can think of having like a selection of having a vocabulary for an action that you can interpolate into your notification string. So if you think of like a Python F string, where I might have declared a variable called prod or name, and then via the F string I can say, F colon bracket F quote brackets will, or F bracket name, and it will interpolate will. We're thinking about like a much richer vocabulary of things that people want to know. So the related deployment, the workspace where something happened, the name of the author of the workspace, which we can get from flow run provenance. So I think it will be a significant upgrade on the notifications front, and it'll be super slick. And I have a lot of ideas on just off screen. I have a whiteboard where I sketch out all of my best ideas, and I've got some interesting user experience thoughts for this parameterization, this interpolation, beefed up notifications.
Very cool. It's so timely. I think this morning, maybe, or certainly in the last 24 hours, I saw someone in community Slack asking about how they could get some of that information into their notifications. And it sounds like that's coming here in the next several weeks, months, for sure.
Yeah, and like a lot of things, right? Like our first reaction as programmers is to try to figure out how to do it. And it's like, oh, you could bring this block in, and then you can do this all in Python code. But like, we view those patterns as desire paths. These are things that users do, and it takes up a lot of their brain power. It's the negative engineering that we've talked about. And so we're going to bring that into Prefect, have us handle it. It's all boilerplate. We're going to do it better, faster, cheaper than you, and you can do everything in Prefect.
Yeah, I love it. That's a compelling sales pitch for sure. Just make it nice and easy.
And I'm excited for after automations as well, right? Like this blog post that our boss, or my boss, Bill, posted that's become kind of Prefect canon, the data flow coordination spectrum. We described this spectrum of orchestration to observability. Sometimes it's a spectrum, sometimes it's a flywheel, sometimes it's a mess because we're all working with data. But we know that these underlying events, triggers, resources, APIs are going to be super useful in helping us expand into or lean into the observability side of that spectrum. So in the next few months, you'll hear me talking more about observing things in external systems, like through blocks. So if you use a DBT block, you will be able to, or DBT cloud block, you'll be able to, see and react to DBT events. That is one thing. It's an aspiration. We haven't really roadmapped it out yet. But integrating, right? Like one of our product values is that good products are integrated products. And so we've got this very strong integration foundation of blocks. We want to start leveraging that, having those block interfaces produce telemetry when their methods are called to help, again, kind of understand, control, react to your entire modern data stack, not just things that Prefect knows about intimately, like flow run state changes, task run state changes, work queue health.
It's super exciting. I know that's a vision that Bill's articulated, and I think Jeremiah even articulated in kind of the general availability release of Prefect 2 as where we want to go. And it looks like we're getting quite close to some major step on that path for sure.
Yeah, and the details have and will the implementation details and the order of operations have and will continue to change. But if you go back and look at Jeremiah's reintroducing Prefect post from GA, like that vision is still alive and well. Like that's what we're barreling towards. And as a startup employee, it's always impressive to me when we can keep a single vision or even single idea in our head for more than 3 months at a time. I'm super excited to keep pushing this forward in the new year. Just drafted some new awesome engineers onto the team. I think we're going to basically double our capacity and have some exciting stuff as early as February.
Oh wow, yeah, that's exciting. Yeah, it has been really great to watch this vision come to life here, and this is the first fruits of that, I think, for everyone to really be able to use. So it's going to be just more and more good stuff here. I'll have you on the show even more in the future.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Cool. Well, we are almost at time here. Do you have anyone? If anyone has questions, please post those in chat. And Will, if you have any closing thoughts about anything at all, or I have one actually. I do want to ask you about. Just knowing that this was a process where we had a kind of early beta that we let the community in on through our Slack community. How useful was that process, and what was that like? Did you get some good feedback there?
Yeah, it was fantastic. So we did this in a bit of a phased rollout. In retrospect, because things have been pretty stable, we may have been a little more aggressive on our timeline. But honestly, we opened up an alpha internal, and then the next phase was Club 42. That's our ambassadors program. Reach out if you're interested in that. And then the community, and now every existing user has this in some limited capacity. And it's not limited from a feature perspective, just a quantity of automations perspective while we're on the road to GA. And each phase kind of introduced new features, and we got new feedback on things. Club 42 in particular, I had a bunch of one-on-ones just watching people use the feature. There's no replacement for watching, as a PM, like PM advice to other PMs that are here, but also engineers and everyone. Watching someone use your product for the first time is like the most valuable 20 minutes you can spend on a product. And so that was really, really valuable, both in terms of quick fixes and quick wins in terms of, we talk a lot about how ergonomic a feature is, quick wins in terms of how natural it felt to use the feature, even just copy changes or menu or ordering. So that was good, but also informing things like the roadmap. I'll be the first to admit, like, I hadn't really thought about Python client first implementation or Python client entry point to automations. It was immediately surfaced by almost everyone external that had used this. So it's like, great, let's do the roadmap. That's why we keep the roadmap a little nimble, right? We have really good fidelity on the next month or two, but after that, we want to be really flexible and responsive to the users' requests and feedback. And so, yeah, like I put that on as a direct response. There are a few other roadmap items that I'm not quite ready to talk about, but they came directly from the community. So as always, thank you to the beta users.
Awesome. That's great. That's a wonderful symbiotic relationship there. People can get early trial of features, and we can make the features even better. It's a win-win for sure. Awesome. Cool. Well, I asked you a question before I jumped in with that question. So do you have any closing thoughts, Will, for automations?
Mostly I'm curious what you're working on. You got anything to plug? You got any workshops?
Ooh, wow, good. Flip the script there. I like it. We do have a lot of training. Wow, as my AirPod falls out of my ear. We do have a lot of training coming up here. We got 4 pack courses in the new year. Check those out. We're going to be posting about those in the community Slack channel. So if you're in London, New York, DC, or the Bay Area, or maybe want to get there, come check out our Prefect certification training. It's a lot of fun. That's my plug.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, no real closing thoughts other than, this is a fun new feature. It is also the foundation of a bunch of really cool stuff coming in 2023. So stay tuned.
Awesome. I love it. Well, thank you so much for your time, Will, and thank you everyone for tuning in. We will see you over in Community Slack, or catch us next time on Prefect Live. See y'all.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. See ya.